Tebow going on his own. He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Carberry gets over the line. Try from Munster.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Hello and welcome along. I'm Alan Quinlan and you're listening to episode 46 of the Red 78 here on the Rugby channel. And with me as always is Niamh Briggs. How are you, Niamh?
Hi Quinny, how are you?
Oh, grand, not a bother. No Munster match for, last Thursday week, so it's not... That South Africa game was obviously a high for him. We're obviously going to talk a little bit about the November internationals and looking ahead to the Connacht game at the weekend. We want you to be involved, and you can tweet us at Rugby Channel or tweet both of us at our personal Twitter handles, or leave a comment on YouTube after the podcast. So we have some tweets, maybe some impressions about, where Munster at. Can they build on that performance against South Africa for Saturday night in Thomond Park?
Yeah, so I'm just going to actually just give you the two comments that were on our YouTube channel, if that's okay, because one was very applicable to what we've been speaking about the last day we're on. So obviously, Jerry Holland had passed away, and you had done a lovely piece about him. But Patrick Keane came in and said, "R.I.P. Jerry. He truly represents the glory years of Munster, legend. Also, we need more games in Cork with some crowd and some crack. Even with the weather being shit, it was amazing. Hopefully any knockout game will be up there. Truly amazing stadium. Even the walkout was a good laugh. I'm a Limerick man, but have to ask, would that game have been a sellout in Limerick? And what was the last actual sellout in Thomond Park? Sellout a few weeks before a game. Not sure if you would move any knockout out of the Aviva to Mad for the money."
Yeah, that's an interesting point about moving the matches, but I think certainly Munster would like to possibly, if they have the knockout stage, to go back to Cork again. It was a great night, and but we'll wait and see. It'll all be dictated by numbers and finances.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think the usual Stephen's Day Leinster game in Thomond Park and a lot of those European Cup games, they're fairly well sold out in terms of good crowds in Limerick as well. So look, we'll just have to see. Tom Lundgren also says, one game at a time, lads. At the end of the day, Munster are only a bonus point away from sixth place in the table. Build on each game now and into the Heineken Cup. We can get back up there one game at a time. Loves his very positive Thomas. Liam Sheehan, we're just going on to your tweets now. Is that all right? So from the tweet that you put out, Liam Sheehan, not sure if the Irish players will be back. There's a strong case to be made for giving most of the team that beat South Africa another go. Joe Healy, successful November results-wise. However, lacking a good kicker probably cost South Africa the win, and a lack of discipline as well as their first try being disallowed. And a lucky penalty for Ireland just might have cost the Wallabies a result they probably deserved. Winning is a good habit, though. Martin Bramall, Connacht will be up for this as Andy's last game at Thomond Park. We'll want to win it for him and do the double over Munster. Interesting who the coaches will go with. Healy was on it against South Africa. Crowley showed some good stuff against the All Blacks and didn't look out of place on Saturday. So they're the gist of it, really. I think the big thing will be the selection in relation to who's available for this weekend.
Yeah, I think I'm sure people would have seen that Keith Earls is going to be back training. Liam Coombs is back. John Klein. Joey Carberry is training with Munster this week. He's still going through his return to play protocols. And I think all the Irish players are going to be back and available for selection. So now Graham Rowntree has a much healthier looking squad to choose from. And the argument from one of the tweeters there, I think it was Martin Brummel, that was saying about, should he go with the same players again that played against South Africa? I think you've got to drop one or two of the internationals in there and go as strong as possible. They'll certainly be feeling better about themselves, and obviously the Irish players coming back, having won those 3 games, they won't be bouncing into camp, but they'll be in good spirits. They didn't lose a game, and it's obviously a big clash. Munster are 14th in the table, Connacht are 13th in the table, or 12th in the table on 13 points. They're 1 point ahead of them. So
yeah, I think the likes of Earlsy being back is huge for that group as well. I think, you know, I think Munster have missed him hugely over the last while. And that's no disrespect, because I am the biggest supporter / fan of Shane Daly and Calvin Nash. I think they've been playing incredibly well, and I hope that they'll be selected again, because they've just had such a brilliant start to this season. But I just think that old head, that ability to kind of just manage situations defensively as well, you can't. That's almost priceless in terms of that. You know what I mean? The defensive work.
Yeah, obviously we go into what Munster need to do and what they're facing a little bit later. Just want to go back to the Ireland game against Australia. So we just want to have a quick chat about that. The biggest talking point of this game for me, and there's been a lot of chat about it and a lot of column inches. Lots of people have an opinion on this, and it seems to be all swaying one way, that Nick White should not have went back onto the field after him going off for a HIA. Just for anyone that didn't see it or doesn't understand what we mean, what we're talking about, Nick White makes a tackle on Mac Hansen near their try line, gets a bang. Didn't look significant. He looked a bit dazed. He seemed to bang his head off the ground. He stayed down for a minute. A minute or two later, Australia have a 5-meter line out. The try wasn't given, obviously, and Nick White has to break around the back of the line. He's tackled. His head hits Josh van der Fleer's knee as he's going to the ground. He clearly looks dazed. He's wobbling on his feet. As he's kind of in the crouch position, he stands up. He has another wobble. Ben O'Keefe states to the Australian medic that was on the field, that he's wobbling and he needs to go off. And he saw him wobble, basically. I was on commentary, and my thought when I see that nowadays is, you know, that's the end of the game for the player. They should not come back onto the field, because they're displaying symptoms of a concussion, a brain injury, and a bang in the head. And he's clearly wobbled. He went off, and to my alarm, and a lot of people watching as well, he comes back on the field 6 minutes later. I was shocked. And before I kind of, you know, everyone knows my opinion on it at this stage, but what was your take on it, Niamh? And how can we make this situation much better? Because now, in the aftermath of the game, it's come out that the independent match doctor was watching the first incident, monitoring that. And while the second incident took place, he didn't see it. My question as well is, why didn't the Australian doctors do something here? The Australian medic was standing there and clearly saw Nick White wobble on 2 occasions. He should have been strong enough to make the decision to remove Nick White and not allow him back out onto the field. They then rolled him out for media duties afterwards, and he was very, very strong and adamant that, I wasn't concussed, I was fine, just got a bit dazed and running at big men. That was a strategic move, and it was very obvious that they did that on purpose. And Nick White now has been stood down for 12 days, so his HIA has been changed and it's been elevated to the next level, which is where you're stood down for 12 days. So the whole thing is a bit of a farce for me. I'm not blaming World Rugby for this. I'm blaming the Australians, and I'm blaming the independent match doctor. This should have been handled so much better. And the message we send out from this, again, is one that's not a positive one. And there's player welfare has to be a priority right across the board, not just in the professional game.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I was similar to you. I couldn't believe that he went back on the pitch. I know you were on air. I don't know if you got to see the aftermath. I thought Joe Malloy in studio for Virgin Media was exceptional in how he went about explaining it. And for anybody who's watching that, once you display any form of concussion symptom in relation to like poor balance or being a little bit like off on your feet or whatever, that's a risk and remove. There's no HIE for that. That's just a diagnosed. You don't come back on the pitch, and the ambiguity here is that it's scary to think. We've had this conversation over the summer in relation to the Jeremy Loughman one over in New Zealand, where rugby wrapped on New Zealand's knuckles in relation to that and how they handled in terms of their independent
and
doctor.
Ireland's as well, and Ireland.
We haven't learned from that, and that's probably the scary thing, I think. And look, Quinny, you and I were both competitors. You're in the moment. If someone says to you, "Come on, you're going off," you'd absolutely be like, "No, I'm not." Taking it out of the players' hands is an absolute must, and I just think that medic is there. I also think Ben O'Keefe probably needs to be stronger. I've seen him wobble. He cannot return to play, and there's lots of facets to it, but it is such a poor look for the sport that are already battling so many issues in relation to historic concussive symptoms, the court case obviously within rugby, and there just seems to be a couple of these incidents that are popping up every few weeks, and we're just not helping ourselves.
Yeah, there was another one in the Scotland game, and the Argentinian fullback, it was clearly concussed as well. So it's something that is very, very worrying. It needs to be better right across the board, and you need the coaches and the medical staff to really be on a level playing field here, because the independent doctor has come out obviously and said that he was watching the incident, to replay the first incident to clearly see what way Nick White fell. I could see that within 20 seconds in one replay. I could see that. I know, to go.
But you see, here's the thing, like, so that I've been inside that independent match doctor's place as it's happening. There's loads of angles that they have to watch because they have to be absolutely certain that, you know, there is something. My big issue is that.
Do you know what might be helpful?
Can I just say something? My big issue is that I get this independent doctor saying, "Well, I missed it the first time around because I was watching the first incident." Nick White has then been removed for a HIA. So the independent doctor has now said, "Okay, we actually need to remove him." Why have they not removed him altogether? Why have they allowed the HIA to take place in the first place? That's where my issue is.
Because he's saying that he did.
I know, but he's loads of time to see it in that moment.
I know, but this is what he said, and it's all a cover up, and it's rubbish. He's saying that he didn't see the second incident. He should just watch the player. If the match restarts, you got to go back and start watching the player's behaviours. There's no point in watching an incident to see how he fell and what way he fell over and over. You've got to. The game is just watch the player, and then you'll get a pretty good indication of if that player is displaying any symptoms. Which he wasn't. He was fine. He was fine from the first one, but look, it's very, very frustrating to see that again, and it's a worry and a concern. Overall, the performance, I think, is it unfair to say it was a poor match? Was it just two teams? My impression was two teams cancelled each other out. There was a lot of mistakes and errors. Ireland turned the ball over a little bit too much for my liking, and I think this didn't really get long periods of dominance. They had moments for sure, and Australia made it really difficult. They were obviously very, very up for it. There was a bit of niggle in the game. So did they stop Ireland from playing, or was it just a poor performance from Ireland?
I think the Australian coaching setup did their homework incredibly well. And I think that they targeted Ireland in places that Ireland probably wouldn't have been under pressure before in relation to the breakdown, the defensive, that high defensive line, the ability then it made getting passes, you know, that swing around attack that Munster or that Ireland have, where they have a front runner out the back and a front runner. It made it really difficult for that to happen, and for them to execute it. So I just think that they also were very smart in how they kicked back to Ireland, which was really, really good. They put Gibson Park under a lot of pressure. And I think if you're Andy Farrell, you'll actually be secretly delighted that your squad were put under this amount of pressure and attacked in a different way, and still came away, irrelevant of whether, you know, a lucky penalty here or try, you know what I mean? They still found a way to win. And that's a really good physical South African team, an incredibly physical Fijian team that could just play from anywhere, and a messy, dirty Australian team that just made the breakdown, you know, very difficult. Like, if you're looking at Ireland, right, and you think about, if I want to coach against Ireland, what am I going to look? Well, they have the quickest ruck in World Rugby, so that's like between 2 and 3 seconds all the time. So slow down that ruck. Their ability to catch high balls, take Hugo Keenan out of it, isn't as solid as you might think. So we can then target certain players in relation to their ability to catch the ball. But also, if we can make things messy for them in terms of a shooter here and there in the defensive line, targeting runners out the back as opposed to the front runners, then it actually stops their flow, that rhythm, and you have a way into the game. And I just think that Australia did that really, really well the other day. And but on the flip of that,
if this happens again, how do Ireland get their flow and the rhythm? Just we
I
won't
think
stay in it too.
But you learn from that now. The next review will be on that. Will be okay. This happened. Okay, they've shown us this picture. How do we change what we want to do? So you learn from that. You hit the front runner. You have an inside runner as opposed to a runner out the back. You start to kind of change a small little bit of pictures in relation to being able to go. And I do think that they've been shown a picture. They'll definitely learn from it. And I think that Andy Farrell will be happy at the end of this series.
Yeah, obviously really happy, I think, with the 3 wins, but he was honest in his assessment as well. I don't think anyone will be too carried away. And it's a little bit different in the feeling from 2018 because there's caution there about what's happened. I think they obviously need to, I think in some ways, because we're really good with the ball and we have been for the last 12 to 18 months, I think Ireland need to kind of add a little bit to their kicking game as well, and sometimes realise that if they overplay in their own half, that they're going to be under that pressure to break down. So maybe that's somewhere where they need to just get the balance right. It was a big night for Josh van der Flier, World Player of the Year, outstanding, very well deserved. I think it's something that's he, as he said himself, he's never even thought he'd be in that position. 2 years ago, he was struggling to be on the Irish team, and now he's receiving that award. Tyburn as well being named on the team of the year. Johnny Sexton, Tyke Furlong. It's incredible to think that they've got to that position, and 4 of them are recognised with that's 3 Irish forwards and a back. So it was brilliant. That was brilliant. And look, it caps off a good end to a really good November series. I think the performances, and I don't think it's any harm that we've had a little dip in the kind of intensity and the flow of the game. It's, he's capped how many players? 5 players, I think, in this series. The A team at the start against New Zealand was obviously disappointing. But the journey continues and the preparations ahead of next year. So we'll see when they go to Cardiff and at the start of February, can they, get a good 6 Nations under the belt. So just for the listeners, we did the piece last year around the Irish games. And this is our first one this year because we've had a lot going on the last few weeks in the podcast. It's the Are you watching Andy Farrell? So this is a little bit different because the player we're going to talk about is Jack Crowley and what he's gained and the way he's kind of elevated himself from that emerging Ireland tour to getting capped against Fiji, starting the other night against Australia. So I think Andy Farrell is watching Jack Crowley, obviously, but just how impressed are you of him in the last couple of weeks? Obviously, he was thrown right into the lines then on Saturday night to start that test match so early. I don't think some people said and were mentioning that maybe it was a move from Ireland that Johnny Sexton was never going to play. I don't think so. I think I saw Johnny Sexton out in the field and he looked like someone who was really ready to start the game. So could he have played? Possibly, but I think they didn't risk him. So your impressions of Jack Crowley, not just in the last couple of weeks, but this season, his body language, his performances, and the other night, how did he do?
Yeah, I thought he was. I think he's been so good. I think he's been the real big winner from the emerging tour on. I think, obviously, Andy Farrell wasn't over in South Africa for that, but the likes of Easterby, Mike Cat, and Paulie were. And they're obviously seeing something in him that's kind of catapulting him up there. I think he's clearly now in the very much for the mix for that backup spot to Johnny Sexton. I was disappointed for him in the first half that he wasn't allowed to express himself. Ireland didn't have a huge amount of ball. When they did, Gibson Park was just trying to protect him a little bit, which I totally get, you know. But I do feel like in the second half, we got to see more of his ability to tack to the line, his ability to control. His temperament is made for this game. You can see him so calm and composed, but on the flip of that, you can see him demanding things of people, and that's only going to grow the more experience he gets. You know, we speak a lot about, you know, other 10s within the province and the country, and not having that little bit of bite, just like, you know, that we're used to with Johnny. And I think Jack Crowley has the ability to go there to be able to control things. And I think that, you know, 22 years of age, you know, Johnny didn't get capped till he was 24. He's got a huge amount of growth in that. But I certainly believe that it's going to be very interesting when everybody's fit and everybody's available for selection, what way Munster go, because they all offer so much and something so different. I just think that Jack Crowley seems to be more of that complete player, and I was very surprised to see some of the reports afterwards not really probably giving him his credit or his due in relation to how that game went. I thought it was very strange, but I think from an overall you know, last 3 or 4 weeks, I think he'll be really, really happy with where he is.
Yeah, he's obviously got a very, very good position now, and his confidence will grow. But the interesting part, as you say, will Joey Carberry start this Saturday night? Ben Healy played well in South Africa, or against South Africa in Cork. So, are you watching Andy Farrell? Well, you are, because you've had him involved and you've seen stuff, and Mike Catt as well has seen stuff in Jack Crowley. Hopefully, he can kick on and grow from this. The other player I would say who obviously played in that South Africa game for me is Edwin Adogbo. I think he's caught everyone by surprise this year with his performances. And, you know, when you're 6'7" or 6'8", and the physical specimen that he is, he's 118, 20 kilos or something like that. He's a big man. He's very athletic, very powerful. I think they'll certainly be keeping a close eye on his progress in the next couple of months. Will he start with Munster? If he's a regular starter for Munster between now and the end of the season, it could be a wild card for that World Cup squad. People might say that's crazy. I know Thomas Ahern, I've talked to him up before, and I think Thomas this year was starting to really kind of show that that his potential. He's obviously been injured now, so there's good prospects there coming through. Hopefully they can stay fit. But I think Edwin Adogbo could be a wild card. Remember where you heard it first. People might be coming back saying you're crazy, but I just think there's that physical size and power that he has. If he can perform at a high level for Munster between now and the end of the season, you'd never know. I'm sure Ireland are certainly watching him very close. Just to recap there on the Irish players that started. So, because we're with a view to talking about who'll start for Connacht. So for the Australian game, Ty Byrne, Peter O'Mahony, Jack Crowley started. Craig Casey's on the bench. So that's 4 of them. Fiji, Joey Carberry started. Ty Byrne started. Jeremy Lockman, Jack Crowley came off the bench. And for South Africa, we had 3, Conor Murray, Ty Byrne, and Peter O'Mahony. So are they physically worn out from the last number of weeks? Ty Byrne is the one that's involved in all 3. Peter O'Mahony.
I imagine Ty and Pete might not be available this weekend.
Well, Peter O'Mahony didn't play against Fiji, so he had a week off there. So
maybe.
I think, given it's Connacht at home and the desperation for results, I think possibly they're all back in the mix, because then they go to Edinburgh the week after, which is a tricky one to get the balance right of this for the next 2 weeks. So
who do you start at 10, Quinny?
I start Joey Carberry at 10.
Yeah.
I think you start Joey Carberry at 10. I think Jack Crowley could be in the centre. maybe, I don't know. It could be
I
a
think
situation
I'd
in the
love to see
future.
him at 12. I'd love
It
to
could
see
be
him check Jack Crowley at 12.
I think he needs to probably be more involved and be more, he had a lot of tackles in Valentini the other day, probably the best ball carrier, one of the best on the field, and they targeted Jack Crowley. I think this week it should be Carberry. I just think they need to. I don't know. There's not a lot. Like Jack Crowley is closing that gap and he's showing that promise. We just need to see more of him on a regular basis. But and that's a bit of a contradictory statement, I think.
Yeah.
Carberry, for me, at the weekend is probably what they need at the start. But you've seen Crowley at full back, so you never know. The two of them could be on the field together, I think, and that's what possibly will happen going forward. Munster had a disappointing result a number of weeks ago, not so far back, where Connacht beat them, deservedly beat them. Munster had a number of issues that night. They were in a good position for a period of the game. It was quite close in the end, though. Connacht got that try. I think it was Finlay Beelam's try, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And there was 2 tries in that second half. Good result for them. They were desperate for a result that night. Munster had issues and problems, lost the game. Is there a case of Munster getting a little bit of a revenge here, and how can they right the wrongs of that night against a very good Connacht side who are very, very dangerous and who will really again fancy their chances of going to Thomond Park and winning?
Yeah, look, I think there was a lot of factors in relation to that Connacht game. Obviously the emotional pitch of being at home for the first time that season for Connacht, their brand new pitch, Jack Carty being back, he's like their big leader. I do think that was a big thing for them. I think being at home this weekend is huge for Munster. I would worry if they were away. I think with being at home at Munster, they've been playing quite well. Look, we spoke after that game in relation to a couple of things, but in my opinion, Munster needs to just be good at a couple of areas. For me, the most important thing is that starting to execute in terms of the possession that they have. So we spoke a couple of weeks ago in relation to the line breaks, the half line breaks, the offloads that they, they're quite apt and high up in those charts for that. But after that, the next phase, it's either usually, a mistake or a turnover, and they've got to cut those type of errors out. So if they get a half line break or a line break, that they can finish them in terms of, I'm not talking about just a score, but I'm also talking about, being able to hold on to possession for another 3, 4, or 5 phases after that. And that's where those opportunities will come for them to be able to get a score. So definitely have to be more efficient there. Their penalty count, they had 13 or 14 penalties against Connacht the last day. And I think, we speak about it and it's so cliche, it was even back in your time, once you go into double figures, you're struggling to win that game. And a lot of those penalties came in around that breakdown. I do think that they've fixed those issues over the last few weeks, but it's going to be huge because it's going to be an area that Connacht will target. So, yeah, look, I think, we're talking about accuracy. I'd love to know the stats, if anybody out there has stats on this. But Munster's entries into 22 and their ability or inability to convert, and I'm talking about tries, but also offset piece. I feel like when they go into a 22, the line out often doesn't function well. We turn the ball over easily. And it must be so frustrating from a coaching point of view. From a playing point of view, you worked so hard to get into those areas. And I just feel like sometimes we relinquish possession or territory a bit easy.
Yeah, it's obvious. I think the stats and tries scored this year, Munster are 16th, 13 tries scored in those 7 matches. So that tells its own story. They're not scoring enough for tries, so they are not having that ruthless edge. I think we've spoken a lot about the attack and the development of the attack and the change of plan and the positional change and maybe changing the mindsets of players and having, been much more accurate in their passing and trying to be expansive in their game plan. That's been pretty obvious in the games. A lot of stuff is broke down when they've been in possession, good positions. they've 18 clean breaks, so they're 16th in that as well. So they're not getting the clean breaks that other teams are getting. They're trying to create. They're second in offloads, so it's not as if they're being stifled here in trying to play. It's not, they're not being told, well, don't risk this and don't pass, and we want to keep it tight and kick the leather off the ball. They're not doing that. They're certainly trying to play. And the offload will tell you that, 63 offloads. So they're trying to keep the ball alive, but I think it's breaking down too often. In the South Africa A game in Cork, I think everyone would agree that watched that. It was much better. Yeah. Was that down to, South Africa not putting as much pressure? I don't know. I just think Munster were better in the way they protected the ball, the lines they ran, and you could see some of the passes starting to stick. So I think that's what people will hope for on Saturday night, that their attack is much better, because obviously if you want to win matches, Niamh, you've got to score points and you've got to attack teams. And Connacht are a very brave team. They throw the ball around a lot. And I think, maybe you could fall Connacht in the last number of years with the consistency of wins and getting results and getting into Europe last year. That's the reality that was disappointing from last year. But every time you watch Connacht play, they're an exciting side to watch. You couldn't say the same about Munster in the last number of years. Sporadically, we've seen moments. And the big story is the change in the way they're playing and changing behaviours and mindsets. So do you think on Saturday night after the South African game that they will be better? And would it be better to stick with, by and large, that same group? So I'm talking about Ben Healy, Rory Scannell, Anton Frisch, Shane Daly, Simon Zebo, and Mike Haley as your backline. Or do you make those changes with a hope and a view that this week they can get a better understanding and overall be better in their attack?
Yeah, look, you're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. I do think Craig Casey will come back in there, even though I thought obviously Paddy Patterson was so good because he would man the match. But I'd love to see Anton Frisch stay in there. I think, that's the type of player Munster have been missing in the midfield area. Somebody who can create. I know Zebo is struggling with a calf injury, if I'm correct. So I'd imagine Keith Earls will come back in there. And after that, look, that 10 position it all depends on after the South Africa game, I'm pretty sure those players were off again for a few days. So it's not as if they've been training and are all in a rhythm and a flow together. I think they all came back into training on Monday. Maybe the Ireland boys don't come back until Thursday. I don't really know, but so yeah, look, it's interesting. I don't think you go too far. I don't think you go too far wrong by keeping the bulk of that back line. But yeah, look, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of we can see evolution in their attack. We can see the layers happening. They've, I thought some of the tries they scored in that South African game were exceptional, and it wasn't due to South African poor play or poor defence. I thought Munster moved the ball really, really well at times during that game. So yeah, look, I do think it's coming. I just don't think. I always thought to myself it would take till after Christmas to be able to see some sort of, consistency within this group, and I don't think that's changed. I think that we could end up being really, really good against Connacht on Saturday, and maybe not the following week. It's just about time and making sure that I suppose you can see small wins every week.
Is it about performance this week or just any sort of a win? Getting a result. It's a win, yeah. I know that's a stupid question in a sense, because when where Munster are at, they've lost 5 of their first 7. I think it's a win. If they kick one penalty and win the game 3-0, they'll be happy. It's points on the board. It's going to be difficult. Connacht are down there as well. And for both sides, I think it's important to say one win here can kind of push you right up the table. 8th, 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th, depending. If there was a bonus point win, you could get right up there if your results go your way. So there'll be a lot of desperation to get a result. And there's a bit of niggle. We spoke about that the last time. The first scrum in Galway, Connacht destroyed that Munster scrum. That set the tone. I think the first maul, Peter O'Mahony wins it. Connacht held him up, turned the ball over. You can see the reaction, the crowd get behind him. Do Munster need a little bit of that on Saturday night? Set the tone, get their first scrum, come up with a big tackle. Because I think, and this is no rocket science, Connacht are going to come with a lot of aggression. And rightly so. If I was in that Connacht group, I was saying, let's take Munster's scalp again. And we've got to bring, there's a bit of dislike between probably the sides. But I think the intensity and the rivalry between Munster and Connacht is nearly getting more than the Leinster one.
Yeah,
Leinster,
I agree.
Munster.
Yeah.
So, Munster.
I think the crowd could be a huge factor this weekend, and I think that's why Connacht are so good at home. Their crowd are so good and they're so close and tight to the ground, and I just think it's going to be similar for Thomond Park. I really hope people will get out and support them.
Yeah, certainly. It's an interesting one, and 7:30 Saturday night. It's going to be a few fireworks there. Just to finish, I just want to mention again. Yeah, Keith Earl's been back in John Klein, Liam Coombs. That's a big boost for the Munster squad. There was a number of players away. Kieran McDonald, John Ryan, they were with the Babas. Obviously, the Irish players away. Malachi Fekitoa was with Tonga as well, and their win over Uruguay. The last thing I want to mention, and we just mentioned it briefly, and we won't stay long enough, but Tadhg Beirne, his story is phenomenal, really.
Incredible.
Being released by Leinster, going to the Scarlets, coming back to Munster, getting capped in Australia in 2018, getting picked in a British and Irish lines, and now being recognised as one of the best players in the world in his position. It's a phenomenal achievement, really, for a guy that maybe 6-7 years ago, nobody could have seen this.
Yeah, incredible. And I think the more his story gets out there, not to the Joe public, but also to those young academy players and NTS players that might not make the grade first time around, that's a story where hard work and perseverance and ability to go after a dream can have a big ending, and to have that resilience, that the mentality to he was delivering pizzas about 7 or 8 years ago. Do you know what I mean? And trying to train part-time and stuff. And yeah, I just think it's incredible. I think that everybody develops different stages when that young age group. But I think that, if you're an academy player who gets cut and the ability to go somewhere else, it's not, do you know what I mean? It's not the BL, that one team isn't the only team in the world. I think you go and you find your niche and you get comfortable in an environment and anything can happen. And I just think, it's incredible and so well deserved too, by the way. Like, he was absolutely brilliant in the summer in that New Zealand tour, really good over November, and has probably in the last 3 or 4 games been one of Munster's best players. So he's in the form of his life, and I hope, injury free and continues to do that for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, he's brilliant and well deserved for him. And Josh van der Fleer as well, Johnny Sexton, Tadhg Furlong. It's great for Irish rugby to see 4 Irish players on the World Player.
And to be fair, Terry Kennedy too. Terry Kennedy, I don't know.
I was just going to say
that was outrageous. Like, where those Sevens boys have come from to where they finish now. And I know Terry's taking a year out. He's gone to Australia for the year. But, Ireland will miss him. Like, the ability that he has is just outrageous, things that he can do on and off the ball. So, look, a hugely proud day for him and his family and for the Sevens lads.
Maybe he could sign for Munster, flying winger.
Wouldn't be hard. Yeah, it'd be great. He's class. He's class acting and like Josh as well, just an awful nice guy. So I'm delighted for them both. Yeah.
Okay, there'll be.
Can I just say? And the last thing I'll say is, we had a tip town woman who was nominated for World Sevens Player of the Year as well. In Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe, and she scored, top try scorer in the women's Sevens circuit for the last 2 seasons. Absolute flyer, and I just, as a 15s coach, I'd love to get her into playing 15s. She's just ridiculously good at what she does. So hopefully we'll see more of her in the green jersey this season. But well done to her and getting nominated. I'm
glad you mentioned Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe, because I'd be stalked by her mother around the town if I didn't.
Look, she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal and one of the most hardworking players. I played with her, Jesus, when she just turned 18 for Munster and Sports Ground, and incredible to see where she's gone from since, and a lot of self-thought in terms of her hard work is just outrageous.
Brilliant. Well done
Sorry,
to her.
that was my ramble at the end.
No, it's important. It's important to mention her as well, and that's brilliant. And Terry Kennedy there, it's great. It was a good November. Let's hope the next block of games from Munster can be a bit more rewarding than the first block. So it's going to be difficult. Connacht at home, Edinburgh, Leinster, obviously the European games, Northampton and Toulouse in there. It's a busy period. They're on the run now for a good number of weeks, week after week. So hopefully they can get a bit of luck with injuries and get some good positive results. There'll be skin and hair flying in Thomond Park Saturday night. Okay, Niamh, we'll leave it there. Good to chat to you again, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Quinny.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
I'd like to think I know a lot.